Bugungi darsimizda Cambridge 16 test 4 passage 3 analizini ko'rib chiqamiz. Listening. Birinchi navbatda savollarni ko'rishimiz kerak bo'ladi. Which two benefits of city bike sharing do the students agree are the most important? Demak, eng muhim foydalilarini ko'rishimiz kerak va ular agree qilgan bo'lishi kerak. Masalan, kimdir aytadi, "Yo'q, men agree emasman" deydi, "Yo'q, men qo'shilmayman bu gapingga, bu muhim bo'lmaganda" deydi. Shunaqa gaplar bo'ladi. O'shani tushunish kerak. Reducing pollution, reducing congestion, improving air quality, encouraging health fitness, making cycling affordable. Two things students think are necessary for success, necessary for bike sharing schemes. Bikes GPS system, apps should be easy to use. Public awareness should be raised. Only one scheme should be available. There should be a large network of cycle lanes.
Part 3. You will hear two urban planning students discussing bike sharing schemes in different cities. First, you have some time to look at
questions 21 to 24. No, we don't have questions like time for 21 to 24. We already have read it.
I mean, it's great that so many cities have introduced these schemes where anyone can pick up a bike from dozens of different locations and hire it for a few hours. It makes riding a bike very convenient for people.
Yes, but the costs can add up, and that puts people on low incomes off in some places.
I suppose so. But if it means more people in general are cycling rather than driving, then because they're increasing the amount of physical activity they do, it's good for their health.
Okay, but isn't that of less importance? I mean, doesn't the impact of reduced emissions on air pollution have a more significant effect on people's health?
Certainly in some cities, bike sharing has made a big contribution to that, and also helped to cut the number of cars on the road significantly.
Which is the main point.
Exactly. But I'd say it's had less of an impact on noise pollution, because there are still loads of buses and lorries around.
Right.
Shall we quickly discuss...
O'z ko'rganingizdek, bu qismda B bilan C bo'ldi, chunki yozman o'qib tushuntirib beraman. Making cycling affordable, cost can add up dedi. Xo'p, topamiz. Xo'p, boshlaymiz. Talking about the benefits, mana boshlayman. It's great that so many cities have introduced these schemes that anyone can pick up bags. There's the car is a few hours. It makes, but the cost can add up, and that puts people on low income off in some place. Demak, shunda narx ko'payib ketishi mumkin, qimmat bo'lib ketishi mumkin. Shuning natijasida low income familylar, yo, bo'ldi, men ishlatmayman dedi. Shu uchun ham affordable emas, shu uchun ham endi chiqarib tashlaymiz. People generally are cycling, then they're increasing the amount of physical activity. It's good for their health. When health bor, lekin it's not that that's less important. Demak, muhim emas bu. Muhim ahamiyati pastroq dedi, o'sha uchun ham dindan chiqarib tashlaymiz. But doesn't the impact on reduced emissions on air pollution have more significant effect on people's health? Demak, shunda air quality bo'ldi. More significant effect on people's health, air pollution, emission on air pollution bo'ldi. Shuning uchun ham bu C ni olamiz. Certainly, in some cities, bike sharing has made a big contribution to that, and also helped to cut the number of cars on the road significantly. Demak, reducing traffic congestions, which is the main point. Demak, B bo'ladi. Exactly dedi. Less impact on noise pollution dedi. Mana less impact on noise pollution. Shuning uchun noise pollution impact bo'lmaganligi sababli B bilan C ni olamiz. O'z ko'rganingizdek, bu qismda agar tushunmay qolgan bo'lsangiz, eshitolmay qolgan bo'lsangiz, test bo'lib ketgan bo'lsa, o'tirish kerakda. Skriptlardan qarab o'zi o'rganib ketmasa bo'lmaydi. Qiyin. Keyinga o'tamiz.
The recommendations we're going to make?
In order to ensure bike sharing schemes are successful?
Yes.
Okay. Well, while I think it's nice to have really state-of-the-art bikes with things like GPS, I wouldn't say they're absolutely necessary.
But some technical things are really important, like a fully functional app, so people can make payments and book bikes easily. Places which haven't invested in that have really struggled.
Good point. Some people say there shouldn't be competing companies offering separate bike-sharing schemes, but in some really big cities, competition's beneficial. And anyway, one company might not be able to manage the whole thing.
Right. Cities which have opened loads of new bike lanes at the same time as introducing bike-sharing schemes have generally been more successful. But there are examples of successful schemes where this hasn't happened. What does matter, though, is having a big publicity campaign.
Definitely. If people don't know its benefits, they won't use it. People
o'z ko'rganingizdek
need a lot of persuasion to stop using their cars.
okay, ko'rganingizdek, o'zingiz ko'rganingizdek, mana boshlaymiz masalan. Well, nice to have state of the art bags, blah blah blah. Hop. Recommendations, keyword, bu qismda bike sharing is successful. Okay, GPS, I wouldn't say they are absolutely necessary. Demak, absolutely necessary emas, shuning uchun ham ochiq ketdi. But some technical things are really important, like fully functional app, so people can make payments and book bikes easily. Places which haven't invested in that really struggled. Good point. Demak, agree bo'lgan, o'sha uchun ham bu to'g'ri javob bo'ldi. Some people say there shouldn't be competing companies, but in some really big cities, competition is beneficial, and anyway, one company may not be able to manage time. Demak, only one scheme should be available out. How much to invest is a big question. Opened loads of new bike lanes. Interesting bike share schemes have generally been successful, but there are examples of successful schemes. This hasn't happened. Demak, shunda bu ham chiqib ketdi. Cycle lanes bo'lishi shart emas. What does matter so is having a big publicity campaign. Demak, bu qismda definitely, demak, publicity campaign odamlarga tushuntirish kerak. Mana bunaqa qilib ishlatasan, mana velikda mana bunaqa qilib minasan, mana tashlab ketmaysan, mana shunaqa qilib to'lov qilinadi deb tushuntirish kerak ekan. Bu B bilan C bo'ladi. Shuning uchun ham javob ikkalasi ham BC bo'ldi. I think that it's pointless, and I think that it's like not useful at all. But I hope it will be useful, and someone will watch it, and someone will say, "Oh, thank you, you person." And when I die, it will not be pointless. Let's go. Hop, demak keywordlarni topib olishimiz kerak. They agree, disappointing. They think, cheaper. Surprised, successful. Agrees that.
Now listen.
Shut up. We need time. Agrees that investment is required. More investment required. System has been well designed. Disagree about the reason for success. Expanded too quickly. Hope ko'ramiz.
Answer questions 25 to 30.
Shall we look at some examples now
Okay.
and say what we think is good or bad about them?
I suppose we should start with Amsterdam, as this was one of the first cities to have a bike sharing scheme.
Yes, there was already a strong culture of cycling here. In a way, it's strange that there was such a demand for bike sharing, because you'd have thought most people would have used their own bikes.
And yet it's one of the best used schemes. Dublin's an interesting example of a success story.
It must be because the public transport system's quite limited.
Not really. There's no underground, but there are trams and a good bus network. I'd say price has a lot to do with it. It's one of the cheapest schemes in Europe to join.
But the buses are really slow. Anyway, the weather certainly can't be a factor.
No, definitely not. The London scheme's been quite successful.
Yes, it's been a really good thing for the city. The bikes are popular and the whole system is well maintained, but it isn't expanding quickly enough.
Basically, not enough's been spent on increasing the number of cycle lanes. Hopefully that'll change.
Yes. Now, what about outside Europe?
Well, bike sharing schemes have taken off in places like Buenos Aires.
They built a huge network of cycle lanes to support the introduction of the scheme there, didn't they? It attracted huge numbers of cyclists where previously there were hardly any.
An example of good planning.
Absolutely. New York is a good example of how not to introduce a scheme. When they launched it, it was more than 10 times the price of most other schemes.
More than it costs to take a taxi. Crazy. I think the organisers lacked vision and ambition there.
I think so too. Sydney would be a good example to use. I would have expected it to have grown pretty quickly here.
Yes. I can't quite work out why it hasn't been an instant success like some of the others. It's a shame, really.
I know. Okay, so now we've
Shut up. Enough. Xo'p, javoblarni topib chiqamiz. Expand to quickly degan javobdan boshqa hammasini ishlatdik. Xo'p, nimaga bularni belgiladik? Xo'p, C nimaga? Zero surprise successful. Xo'p, Amsterdam, strong culture of cycling. It's strange. Demak, surprise is synonym. People such a demand for bike sharing scheme, but there was such a demand for bike sharing because you have thought most people would have used their own bikes, and yet it's one of the best used schemes. Like successful. Nimaga bunchalik successful? It's strange that it's so successful. Demak, bo'lsin, surprise so successful. It's C. Keyingisi, Dublin. It must be because of public transport quite limited, not really. Good bus network, I'd say price, a lot of do it, but it's really slow. Anyway, certainly weather cannot be a factor. Demak, bu qismda aytyapti, yo bunisi emas, bunisi. Demak, bu qismda they disagree about the reason. Demak, nima uchun bu muvaffaqiyatli bo'lib ketganiga ustida talashishdi, tushunishmadi nima bo'lganini. Xo'p, keyingiga o'tamiz. D, they agree with more investment. Xo'p, London, really good thing. Isn't expanding too quickly. Not enough is being spent on increasing the number of cycle lanes. Hopefully it will change. Yes. Demak, unda pul ko'proq kerak. Investitsiyani ber ko'proq degan ma'lumot bor. Shuning uchun ham dini oldik. Come on. Why you're doing it? Keyingisiga o'tamiz. Buenos Aires. I'm sorry. Huge network of cycle lanes, introduction of scheme, huge number of cyclists, example of good planning, yaxshi planning bo'lgan, well designed bo'lgan, shuning ham iyi bo'ldi. Xo'p, keyingisi New York. Good example of how not to introduce. It was more than 10 times the price of most other schemes. It more than it costs to take a taxi. Crazy, qimmat, arzonroq bo'lishi kerak. Keyingisi oxirgisi Sydney. I would have expected it would have to grow quickly here. I can't quite work out why it hasn't been an instant success. So it's shame degani voy afsus, g'alati bo'ldi, disappointment bo'ldi bu. Shuning uchun ham A'ni oldik. Shu bilan bugungi qism o'z nihoyasiga yetadi. 16 minut bo'libdi o'zi. Keyingi qismda siz bilan ko'rishguncha xayr everyone.